If there is a continuous short report of sale beyond the prescribed limit of 5% for the period of 6 months, it may so happen your total sale is 100 rupees. See how it would be mapped. How it would be mapped, Arun will take care of you, that they are in the GST 1 return and GST 2 return. How it would be captured that you have not uploaded your sale, because you have sold somebody, he has purchased from you. So when he has purchased from you, he has uploaded. So when he has uploaded, so it is not getting it is not mapping. So that means you have short uploaded your sale or short declared your sale, and the limit is 5%. If it is within the 5% and beyond 5% for a period of 6 months, then you will be blacklisted. Now come back to the registration. This is the, overall registration process, because because of the time constraint I am not taking you through the forms and etc. Even it is too early and too premature to discuss the form. Now if you go to what are the basic concerns for the registration? You know that when there would be a registration, anytime there would be a migration from the existing system to GST system. Just think of a situation of a bank. Let me explain you through bank, my experience. So a bank is having all 37 states, including union territories, having branches. All the banks are having centralized registration, the head office is situated. Now tomorrow and today what is happening? All the credits are being parked into a particular location, all the data are being collated, and a complete single ledger, from that ledger information is generated and accordingly return gets prepared. Tomorrow what will happen? When that migration takes place, suppose, just think of a situation, suppose 31st March, some credit unutilized for a bank. How come 31st March, and I am sharing my experience, a very personal and very practical experience which I am sharing with you, my handling of my bank experience. On 31st March, when your service tax is being paid, 31st March, on 31st March. 31st March itself you pay the service tax. Then as a consultant, what we suggest to the bank, don't utilize your credit because you don't have the full information today. Keep say 3 crore, 4 crore depending on the size of the bank's tax payment, 3 crore, 5 crore worth of SINBAT credit we retain to utilize the incremental service tax which may arise as on 31st evening, night. Some transaction may come up because so many entries are kept pending. Lot of entries are required to be given after 6 p.m. and the tax is being generally paid before 6 p.m. So there is a gap, say 3 to 4 crore depending on the past experience. We advise them to keep a 3 to 4 crore, 3 to 5 crore basket. Now 3 to 4 crore basket we retain. It may so happen out of 3 to 4, say 4 crore basket we have advised them, and that 4 crore has not been utilized and it has been paid by cash. Now there is ultimately incremental tax comes to 1 crore. Now incremental tax comes to 1 crore. 3 crore is unutilized. Now unutilized, where it has been parked? It has been parked into the head office. If you ask where from all these have come, it is a huge mammoth exercise. It is possible. It's not possible. It's possible. It's a mammoth exercise. Now 1st of April 2016, 36 registration. And that 36 registration, you cannot hold the credit in one location. You have to disburse that SINBAT credit to all 36 locations, or it may so happen 30 locations based on the available information and data. So how much careful a bank needs, like banks and insurance companies and mutual funds. So it is very, for a company, even for a large companies, those who are having a centralized registration, it's a real mammoth task for the migration. That migration process would be really creating trouble for the company who are having mainly into the service industry, like banks would be the worst affected, the industry, banks, insurance, etc., mutual fund. Now, this credit balance, how this would be distributed, what would be the modalities, etc., and that balance, opening balance, this is what we always discuss about the transitional credit. What would be the fate of the transitional credit, whether it would be refunded as a cash or it would be converted into that GST, so that that can be utilized into subsequent, because from the 1st of April 2016 it would be GST, not service tax, not excise. So whether once the color gets changed into excise, that whether it would be permissible or not, that only the law when it will come, it is only into the discussion stage. Now threshold, you know that already I have discussed that, because that there is, since all India based threshold limit, it would be a burden for the small SSE, but here nothing to be done, because the central government has not agreed to that proposal, and finally a consensus has come up. So I don't think that there would be any change in this regard. One important thing which I would like to mention here, that for the purpose of your determination of threshold limit, say 25 lakhs of rupees, even your export and exempted turnover are to be included, which presently are not included in various tax. So virtually it may so happen an assessee who is an exempted service provider, who is an exempted goods seller, because there has to be some negative list into the GST as well. So he may be having some negative list, falling under the negative list, whether goods or service as the case may be. He is an exempted service provider or he is an exempted manufacturer, but in spite of that he has to have a registration, because all these put together your threshold would be worked out. Now this would be a big concern, because they have proposed that they will not be allowing you to the credit which is lying. I already have discussed this issue, that the registration, the credit of tax paid before the registration, so that will not be, that would be a big concern for the industry, how it would be resolved. So the various representations from the various organizations and various Chamber of Commerce, etc., we have already given the representation from in this regard. I do not know what will come up later. Now, credit of stock, inventories and capital goods which is lying as on a complementation date, that what would be the fate, because all that capital goods which would be used for manufacture of dutiable goods, or capital goods which would be used for the purpose of supply of taxable services. So all these are the grey area which needs really attention and which needs a representation, and we have to wait till it comes. Now, input service distributor, as I told that input service distributor, they have specifically mentioned that it would be service. Now I am giving you an example. When you are taking the service, when you go to a restaurant, you pay VAT, you pay service tax. So when you take a service, when you take a restaurant service, then in the course of taking the service you are consuming the goods as well, and for that matter you are paying the VAT, and there are certain, by virtue of the deeming provision, some service element has been identified and the law has been enacted that is called a restaurant service. Now in GST there would be CGST and SGST both on the single one value. Now whether that component would be considered to be a service or it would be considered to be a goods. If it is a service, how the value to be determined? If only the service component, that now the question comes whether there is an absolute service or not, because in case of a works contract, in case of a restaurant service, there are goods, there are services. If it is an absolute service, there is no problem. I understand that service, any service which has been procured by the corporate office can be distributed by ISD mechanism which is being followed. Now what would be a mixed transaction? It is not clear. Secondly, so far IST mechanism is applicable only for the service tax. Who is presently governing the service tax? Central government. GST would be governed by the central and state. And when you procure a service, even within the state, then CGST and SGST 2 line item would be coming. Now state will allow, whether the state will allow that credit to go to another state, whether that consensus has come up, no clarity. Because the service which has been procured in the state of West Bengal, you have an office in West Bengal but your factory is situated in Jharkhand. Whether you would be permitted to send the service, which is whether only the CGST portion would be transferred or would be the SGST portion or both. So that clarity is required. That clarity has not come up. Now, registration of the project offices. You know that registration, they said that there would be a business vertical. The separate registration is permitted under the business vertical if it is in the one state. If it is not a same business vertical, then there has to be one single registration. Now the question comes, a construction industry having multiple projects in a one state. Now whether each and every project needs to be registered or it would be one single registration and there would be a cross utilization of credit between the projects. So this is one grey area for the construction industry. Now there is a suggestion which various chambers and the institute also they have given, that the concept of blacklisting should not be so hurriedly implemented, because our experience, I am telling you, first 2 to 3 years people will not understand or people will struggle to understand how it is to be done, number one. Number two, there are n number of small SSEs, those who are not geared up with the system. For gearing up that system and the time, an important thing is that the timelines, if you see the timelines what Arun will cover, that you have a timeline of 10th, 15th, 20th, each and every deadline. It may so happen you do not have the bill in your hand on the 10th, you do not have any bill on your, because by 15th you have to send your purchase, first by 10th you have to send your supply. In the written one you have to upload your all supplies, and by 15th you have to upload your all inward supplies. It may so happen you have not received the bill by 15th. So many cases the bill comes quite late. So in that case whether I will be considered to be a willful defaulter? If I am considered to be, because they would be considering considering a period of 3 months if you are a defaulter, or if you are a defaulter for the 3 months in a period of 12 months. 3 occasions you are a defaulter, that means you are a blacklisted company. So there is a suggestion that that concept of blacklisting should be deferred. And this another issue, that blacklisting, that it is proposed that the person who would be buying from the blacklisted company, he would be denied the credit. As I told you, that it may so happen that I am dependent on a particular supplier, he only supplies that particular goods which is my prime input, without which I cannot manufacture my goods. So in that case, if that be the situation, my existence would be at stake. Now, revocation of surrendered and cancelled registration. There is a provision that you can ask for revocation of your surrender registration. You can ask for a revocation. There, the department can revoke the cancelled registration. Now, the question comes: in case of a revocation of license, revocation of surrender license, surrender registration, or revocation of cancelled registration, whether it would be from a prospective date or it would be from a retrospective date. It may so happen some department has cancelled. Think of a situation, department have cancelled because of my some mistakes which I have done or have not complied for a consecutive period. I have not fulfilled the requirement of the law, so they have cancelled. But I have continued business. I have continued my business in spite of I do not have any registration as such. My registration has been cancelled, but I could not stop my business. It has to run on its own way. Now, the question is that now when I have complied, I have filed an application that I have done all compliances to your satisfaction, which after that satisfaction they will revoke my license. Now the question comes that whether that needs to be clarity is required, whether it would be having a retrospective effect or a prospective. If it is a prospective, then what would be the fate of the intervening period? So all this needs to be clarified, because this is only a business process note, it is not a law. See how faulty this situation, you know that there is a contradiction. They have allowed you to a multiple registration for the same unit, for the same company in the one single state, if you have a 4 business verticals, 5 business vertical wise. So for each and every business vertical within the same state would be considered to be a different assessee when there is a cross utilization of credit, but when there is a recovery of demand, they would be considered to be one single assessee. So there is a huge contradiction in this case. Now come to the registration process I have done through. Now come to the payment of taxes. They have proposed that at the time of making payment there would not be any interaction with the department. Everything through system, and payment would be allowed only by a challan. There would not be any adjustment of tax by utilization of your export scripts or any account adjustment, payment book adjustment. Let me give you an example. Today what happens, suppose in your organization you are paying service tax under 5 categories. So 5 categories, there are 5 codes. When you generate your challan, you put the respective code and you put the respective amount. What happened by mistake? That code number interchanged. It happens quite often. Then what you do? As per the present practice, you write to the commissioner, and the commissioner has the power to do the account adjustment. This is called book adjustment as per the central excise procedure. So only the commissioner has the power. Most of the cases we hear from the SSC that I have gone to a superintendent say no, nahi hoga. But because the superintendent doesn't have any power, the assistant commissioner does not have any power, additional commissioner does not have any power. It is only the commissioner has the power, because you need to know to whom you should go. Here only the commissioner has the power. Write a letter to the commissioner and within immediately it would be done. You show the evidence that I have by mistake, this is my calculation, this amount, if the tax should have been 100 rupees, but inadvertently, and this under 100 rupees, this is 150. But at the time of filling up my challan, against 150 I have written this code, and against 100 I have written this code. Right? Then immediately it is being taken care of. There would not be any book adjustment. There would not be any book adjustment. That means this kind of request would not be entertained. Then what would be the fate? That if you make a payment excess in a particular month, that would be adjusted against your subsequent liability. If you do not have any liability in future at all, then you have to file a refund application. Every refund application would be attached with a chartered accountant certificate that there is no unjust enrichment, which Arun will take care of. Now, another thing that today, as per the foreign trade policy and EXIM policy, there are various export incentive scripts are available. And that export incentive schemes are being utilized for making payment of duties. This will not be permitted. Now, if this will not be permitted, then what would be the fate of my scripts which I will be in possession as on the implemented date? Number 1. Number 2, what would be the fate which I am entitled to for any export benefits as per the foreign trade policy, and based on which I have set up my unit and business, etc. So this I will take care of this issue. Now, challan to be generated only from the GSTN and no manual challan. There would not be any manual challan. Any and every challan should be generated through system. And this This challan would be valid for 7 days. Once a challan has been generated, it would be frozen. It cannot be corrected. Please note how careful you have to be. If you generate a challan, that challan cannot be corrected, and that challan will remain valid into the system for 7 days. After 7 days, it would be vanished. Now, how the challan can be generated? If you are a registered taxpayer, then you can yourself or by your authorized representative by logging to GST network. If you are an unregistered taxpayer, then the tax authority, I told that they can give you a suo motu registration, and by generation of a suo motu registration, they will generate your challan and hand over to you for making the payment. Now, what would be the mode of payment? So, challan generation, you have to generate the challan through system, no manual written challan. Then after the challan is done, either you upload how the payment, you can make the payment through internet banking, credit card, debit card, and all other payment gateways. If you want to generate the challan, then take the printout and you want to make the payment over the counter, then limit is only 10,000 rupees per challan. Maximum limit is 10,000 rupees per challan. And this option would be discontinued if once your check gets bounced. You would be given only one chance to make the payment over the counter. If once your check gets bounced, you will be blacklisted and you would not be permitted to make the payment over the counter. Payment through NEFT, RTGS in favor of RBI using banks, including other than authorized banks, that would be permitted. There will be 4 accounting codes, main accounting codes more precisely, like CGST, SGST, IGST and additional tax of that 1%. And 5 sub-codes for each accounting code being tax, interest, penalty, fees and other receipts. That is what has been proposed. Now, what are the concerns? You know, the time, that limit of 10,000, it really needs a clarity that whether I can make 10,000. That is not clear. Whether I can make, because they have kept a par challan 10,000. Please note, my tax payment due is say 50,000 rupees. Whether I can generate 5 challans and one by one I can deposit 5 challans into 5 checks. Whether it is permissible or not clarified. But recently I have the privilege of asking this question to the CEO of the GSTN. He said that no, nahi milega aapko. एक बार ही आपको 10,000 का ही मिलेगा. You would be getting only one time 10,000 rupees. But it is his version. He is not the lawmaker, right? It is his version. But if you read the law, if you read the proposal where it is stated par challan. So if it is a par challan, a clarity is required that whether I can make a 50,000 payment by generating 5 challans and 5 different checks and I can go make a payment to the over the counter. Now, adjustment through credit script, which I told you that already it is proposed to be discontinued. Now there is a huge question, what would be the fate of that scripts which would be holding as on a date, whether the government will make the payment by cash or all export incentive scheme, instead of issuing a script, they will make good by paying you cash. So this requires huge clarity, otherwise there will be a lot of issues in the GST regime. It is still not clear whether payment for reverse charge can be made out of your input credit. Like today, it is categorically clear that in service tax reverse charge mechanism, you cannot make the payment through your send back credit. So that clarity is required. There is no mention about that reverse charge, but we can expect that the similar provision will come up into the GST as well. Now that modification of the challan, there is a very interesting my observation. They have written the word, once the challan which has been generated, because challan generation had a different process. Once that process gets clear, then the challan has been generated. Once the challan gets generated, you cannot rectify the challan, it gets frozen. You have to only make the payment through gateway, or you have to, if it is less within 10,000 rupees, then you have to generate and take a printout, and over the counter you make the payment. Now it says that once it gets frozen, you cannot correct it. There may be 100 reasons that there may be mistake in working in generating a challan. Then what will, and they have said that the challan would be valid for 7 days. Does that mean that I will allow the challan to go vanish and I will generate another challan? So that means whether that needs a clarity, that once a challan which is gets vanished, you are not permitted to make the payment, or some other issues has to become. Otherwise, the clean reading and interpretation of that particular proposal, this which comes, and as a consultant we would suggest wait for 7 days. Because otherwise if there is any mistake, you have to file a refund application along with a chartered accountant certificate that there is no unjust enrichment, etc., etc. So all these needs to be very, very minutely to be taken into consideration, and it is to be what, as a consultant I would suggest, if that be the law tomorrow, I would suggest don't make the payment. Pay some interest if you are in a delay. Make some payment, make some interest, but rectify the challan, and after the challan gets vanished, generate a separate challan with a correct year. So all these, you know that how much clerical accuracy today in the, when you are doing the job through system and through how much clerical accuracy is required for generating a challan, and each and every, and once, and that is why Arun has taken the, I would request all of you not to leave the room, because Arun will give you the nightmaring story for the return. This return would be the nightmaring story I am telling you in the GST, which Arun will tell you. Now, credit adjustment for demand for the past period. Let me give you a very practical example. Suppose you have a 6 crore of rupees SINGHI credit as on 1st of April 2016. There may be two options. It cannot be 100% denied. It cannot be. They just cannot say that you have to add it to your cost. It cannot be possible. So they have two options. Either they will allow it to be converted into GST credit. If it is Central Excise and Service Tax, that means SINGHI, it would be CGST. If it is VAT input credit, then it would be SGST credit. Clear? So now you have been allowed to, I am giving you one side of the example, you have been allowed to convert it into credit. What is the credit name as on 1st of April? Either CGST or SGST. Say let me talk for example SINGHI credit, which is the most important EA. Now SINGHI credit, you have a 6 crore in your account, and that 6 crore got converted into CGST credit. Now what happens over a period of time, why you had an accumulated credit? That history, if you see, I am sharing my personal experience, this is absolutely practical, no theoretical. Why you have such a huge accumulated credit? Because suddenly your export has gone up. Since your export has gone up, you are unable to utilize the credit, and that credit is lying unutilized. Now what will happen tomorrow? It has been converted, and if your business model is not changed, it is going on. So every time it would be accumulated. Every time your credit would be accumulated, and you have to file a refund application for the GST matter, you have to. Now some of the things which you have a domestic sale, and for that matter your some utilization takes place. So every year, say particular year, say you have a 10 crores of credit and you are utilizing say 3 crores of rupees, or say 5 crores of rupees. So 5 crore every year you are accumulating. Now say for example after 3 years you have an accumulated credit of 12 crore. How much you have converted as on the implemented date? 6 crore. Just imagine the situation, after 2 years there is an excise demand of 5 crore. Now how that 5 crore you have admitted the mistake? Yes, it is an admission and you have gone to a consultant said that yes, this is the mistake, you have to make the payment of this 5 crore. Now how these 5 crore to be paid? Because you don't have any SINGHI credit today. Because the credit got changed the color. It is now CGST credit. Whether that CGST credit can be utilized, credit can be utilized for the making the payment of area excise duty or any previous period's demand, that needs a clarity, number one. Number two, if it is being paid by you, if it is being paid to you as a cash, 6 crore you are holding, 6 crore you are holding as a credit, you will say, okay, you file a refund application, I will pay you in 3 installments, 6 crore. You are happy, you got the money, you pay the tax. Third issue, there would be another problem is, if it is paid by cash, no problem, you have taken the cash, you have deposited the cash, absolutely okay. But once you are not given the cash and it has been converted into CGST, even if it is allowed, again there would be a dispute. Because if you see the present SINGHI credit rule, utilization of SINGHI credit is FIFO basis. Now if I see the FIFO basis SINGHI credit, you have a say 12 crore SINGHI credit, 12 crore CGST credit, out of which in the period, suppose it may so happen, you have already utilized 6 crores of rupees credit. If the 6 crore you have utilized on a FIFO basis method, opening credit has gone. So the present credit which is not been converted, rather it is pure GST credit. So some mechanism, because this is the grey area which really we are unable to give you any input in this regard. This is really the practical grey area how this would be sorted out when GST would come. Now it requires a clarification that has not been done. You know that today, presently, when you go for a, as per say Central Excise and Service Tax, when you go for an appeal and or a tribunal appeal, the commissioner appeal and tribunal, we have to make a payment of 7.5% or 10% as the case may be, as a pre-deposit. And that pre-deposit is allowed to be paid by utilization of your available SINGHI credit. But in GST, no clarity whether any pre-deposit can be paid out of the credit into my GST account. That needs to be very clear, that whether I would be allowed to pay the pre-deposit out of my credit balance. Now, any interest and penalty, by mistake I have paid excess, what will happen? If I make a payment of interest and penalty by mistake excess amount at the time of calculation, then what will happen? There is no clarity, and primarily from the understanding of the process note, you have to go for a refund application. So with this, thank you very much for your patient hearing. If you have any question on this payment and registration, I would try to give my best so that you get some amount of clarity which I have, because I cannot give something which I don't have. Thank you very much once again for your patient hearing.